Harry's wife, beheaded. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. Undoubtedly, you've been drawn here as a combination of wanting the wisdom of the ultra and the intriguing nature of my thumbnail, both in terms of the graphic and its title. What news does H.G. bring? Has there suddenly been an edict from Charles III, which has resulted in the separation of head from neck for the gruesome twosome? Or is it the case that H.G.'s gone all Jeremy Clarkson and is somehow advocating that this be done in a sudden rash decision-making process? Well, whilst of course that would certainly result in not having to tolerate the gruesome twosome any longer, I am naturally not advocating that that occurs. Naturally, I wish to nullify any threat to control posed by the gods of YouTube, should they get overexcited about thinking that I'm issuing such an edict, or encouraging people in such a regard. Of course, I am not. But what is it that has resulted in this? Well, as you know, I take information from a variety of different places, allowing you to make a determination as to the provenance and veracity of that material, in order to then analyse it and explain to you what's going on. And we turn to that well-known publication, The Lincolnite. What is that, I hear you say? Well, it would appear to be a local publication for news in the county of Lincolnshire. Lincolnshire is a county in England, and there are, amongst many other things, many pigs there, and they make excellent sausages, something you want to perhaps bear in mind. Anyway, leaving aside the delicious sausages, and we're not going to link that to Harry's latest fascination, instead, the Lincolnite runs with an article stating Harry's wife's Lincolnshire ancestor was beheaded on Henry VIII's order. So way back, many centuries ago, it would be no surprise to find that an ancestor of Harry's wife was causing trouble, which resulted in, of course, another red-headed member of the royalty, in effect, losing his shit and ordering that there be a beheading. Henry VIII is perhaps one of the most famous English monarchs as a consequence of the fact that he had 6 wives. You may recall that it was a case of divorced, beheaded, died, divorced, beheaded, survived. So if my memory serves me correctly, Catherine of Aragon, which was a marriage more of convenience, which lasted a long time, he divorced her as a consequence of her failure to provide him with a male heir, notwithstanding that he provided Mary, who later went on to be an English queen and was known as Bloody Mary. After her came Anne Boleyn, who of course has always been portrayed as something of a snake, but actually she was shafted by the politics at court, and she ended up losing her head and was beheaded. Then, of course, after Anne Boleyn came Jane Seymour. She provided a male heir, and then she went on to die. And in the circumstances, Henry then went into an elongated period of apparent grieving for this loss. After that, the unfortunate Anne of Cleves, who did not find favour, apparently her mugshot, i.e. the portrait that was painted of her, was perhaps a little too flattering, and he wasn't overly pleased with her once she turned up, and ultimately Anne found herself also being divorced. Then it was the young Catherine Howard, who really was a sex choice by Henry VIII, and she ended up being beheaded. And finally, there was Catherine Parr, who outlived him. Now, he's well known for those 6 wives, and the fact, of course, of his desire to be granted a divorce with regard to Catherine of Aragon that resulted in him splitting from the Catholic Church and founding the Church of England. One of the Tudor monarchs that was very well known. Of course, there was the entertaining series, The Tudors, which of course played fast and loose with much history and shouldn't be relied upon for a thorough backdrop with regard to understanding the history of the Tudors, namely Henry VIII. Henry VIII, of course, many people have asked me, well, what was he? How was it that he behaved in terms of the beheadings, the aggression, the way that he sought to get his own way vis-a-vis divorce, and the changes that he made to the church and the dissolution of the monasteries, etc.? What might he have been? So you ask yourself, what was Henry VIII? Was he one of my brethren? Well, he certainly was a narcissist. Of that, there is no doubt. And also, he knew what he was. He was aggressive, albeit charismatic, and he would find himself within the category of the greater. Now, what sub-school was he within greater? Well, I'll keep that up my sleeve for now. But of course, he behaved in a way whereby he knew that he needed control and he needed fuel. He needed that adoration. He wouldn't have called it fuel. He'd have recognised that he required something else with regard to the responses, that he was driven by a paranoia with regard to people not doing what he wanted, and everything that he did, he was justified in doing. And it would appear that, like, it was justified for him to ensure that Anne Boleyn was beheaded and that Catherine Howard was beheaded, and of course the erudite lawyer that supported him for such a long time, until such time as he could not, in good faith and good conscience, continue to support Henry VIII's position vis-a-vis getting a divorce. And in that respect, of course, the individual is the lawyer, Sir Thomas More. And he found himself being executed. So nobody was safe from the rage, from the fury of Henry VIII. And so it would appear that neither was one of Harry's wife's ancestors safe. Let's dive in and find out more about this in an article by Ellis Carran. Did you know that the first Baron Hussey, how apt, of Sleaford is an ancestor of Harry's wife? This is the story of how Prince Harry's wife's family tree spans to a Lincolnshire lord who was beheaded for an alleged treason against King Henry VIII. Harry's wife, Duchess of Sussex, has been a consistent feature of headlines since her marriage to Prince Harry in 2018, assertion of control, facade management, and subsequent departure from royal family duties in 2020, assertion of control through withdrawal. But when you take a trip down the ancestry of Harry's wife, you eventually find your way here in Lincolnshire, and a lord who was even a chamberlain to Mary I, daughter of King Henry VIII. John Hussey, first Baron Hussey of Sleaford, was the son of Chief Justice of the King's Bench, Sir William Hussey, and he would go on to be knighted in 1497 after the Battle of Blackheath. Hussey's great-great-great-grandson was Captain Christopher Hussey, who is significant in this story as he left England in the 1650s to become a founding father of Nantucket, an island off Cape Cod, Massachusetts, in the United States of America. 10 generations down that family line, and we find Thomas Markle, the father of 41-year-old Harry's wife, who first became famous for her acting role on Suits, before engaging in romance and eventual marriage with Prince Harry. Lord Hussey was named as a bodyguard for Henry VIII, and his stock grew from then on, as he became Master of Lifffield Forest in Rutland in 1505, and became an MP as Knight of the Shire for Lincolnshire in 1523. He was born in Sleaford, Lincolnshire in the mid-1400s, dying aged 70 in Lincoln after being beheaded at Tower Hill as part of treason charges brought by the then King Henry VIII. Henry VIII appointed him as Lord Hussey of Sleaford in 1529 and even invited him to the christening of Queen Elizabeth I in 1533. But 3 years later, he was at the helm of an alleged conspiracy to dethrone the king. The urge to conspire against the royal family, something clearly that has been passed on through the ages to Harry's wife. Lord Hussey was implicated in the Pilgrimage of Grace in 1536, a rebellion accused of attempting to overthrow the king and change laws. It is a charge he consistently denied, a little bit like Harry's wife consistently denying that she's bullied anybody. Despite his denial, he was executed alongside his cousin Thomas Darcy after being found guilty by the House of Lords. It is believed that these charges may have been levied due to Hussey's sympathies with the Catholic faith. Descendants of Lord Hussey were left struggling financially and socially. Word to the wise there for the Sussexes. After this, as the family's assets and barony were forfeited following his execution, which played a part in Captain Christopher Hussey's emigration to the USA. While there have been no beheadings or treason charges in this modern-day saga, Harry and Harry's wife has sparked debate and controversy since their stepping back from royal duties and moved to California in 2020. Harry's wife's family tree shows that her story isn't the first royal drama to descend from her bloodline, though the circumstances of these two cases differ greatly. The regal connections are certainly interesting. So there we are. There's no wonder that Harry's wife is causing trouble, narcissist that she is. It's in her blood, passed down from ages past. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.